Hey everyone, welcome to my first TouchDesigner tutorial. Today we will be recreating one of the works by Bridget Riley. The work that we will be looking at is called Movement in Squares, which is like a lot of her optical illusion work. And I thought it would be great if I tried to make it in TouchDesigner, and I was also thinking that we could make all of it with just instancing. So let's get to it. Before we get to TouchDesigner, let's look at the artwork first. So we have this grid which is of 22 columns and about 12 rows, and till the 13th column it keeps decreasing and then it mirrors itself. So what we will try to do with TouchDesigner is create this part and just mirror it. So let's start by creating our basic rectangle SOP, which we will use to instance. Let's add a transform here, give it a uniform scale of 0.01, add a null, and just add our basic render network, which is the geometry, camera, a constant material, and a render top. Once we have this, let's try to create our grid. If we look at our artwork again, the X keeps decreasing, the size keeps decreasing, and also the distance keeps changing, but the Y remains the same for all of the blocks. So let's do the simplest thing first and create the Y channel. So for that, the easiest way that I found was to use a grid SOP. I'm sure there are better ways of doing it, but I think this is the simplest. So we have about 13 rows and 12 rows and 13 columns. Let's convert it to a SOP to chop, and let's just get the Y out of this. But we do not want the Y to be from minus 0.5 to 0.5 because our rectangle is 0.01. So what we want to do is change it from we just multiply it by 12, so from minus 0.06 to 0.06, the sum of which is 0.12, which is 12 times our size of our rectangle. Let's add a null here, and let's create a merge, which we will use for all of our channels and then instance. For the other channels, the size is decreasing, but if you see, it's not decreasing uniformly. The difference between these two is much higher than the difference between these two. So it's decreasing exponentially. And the X, so the distance between these, this and this and this, also keeps decreasing. So let's create a pattern for our size. And what we want is an exponential curve, but if you see here, there's no option for an exponential curve. So what we have to do is create our own wave, which you can do with the wave chop. And if you see, by default the wave chop has 601 samples, and there's no direct way of controlling that. The only way that I found you can do is change the n to 0.22, and that gives you 13 samples. Now if you go back to wave, change the type to expression and change the expression to 1, we have this parameter called decay rate which we want to work with. So by default it's set to seconds. You want to change it to samples, and now if you increase this, you have an exponential curve. It depends what's the minimum value of X that you want. We want something to be around 0.1, so this looks fine. So this is our size, so let's rename it to size. So this is the size which is decreasing over time. For the x which is increasing in the same way, we can use the same curve but inverted. So let's copy this, change this to tx, and add a math to it. So it's from 1 to about 0.1, so let's use that. And it already inverted from 0 to 1. But we do not want it to be from 0 to 1 because our rectangle is really small, it's 0.01. So let's keep it about 0.05. Why did I not make it 0.13, which is the number of columns we have? Is because it's not uniform. We do not have 13 columns of 0.01 size. They're decreasing. So right now we are using 0.05, but we might want to change that later. Let's add a null to this and a null to this as well, and let's merge them. I think it's a good point to look at how we are doing with the rendering. So let's try to instance this. Just go to Geo, turn instancing on, use merge one as your default instance operator, and we want to translate the x by dx, translate y by dy, and translate the scale of x by size. Let's see. That looks good. I think we're almost there. Let's turn the display on for the render to see what we're doing. Let's add the colors now. So for the colors, what we want to do is add the pattern chop. Change the pattern to square because we only have two colors, black and white. And we want to change the length here to the total number of squares that we have. So that will be the number of squares in one, number of rectangles now in one column multiplied by rows, which is 12 into 13, which is 156. And the number of cycles that we want is half of that, which is 78. So now we have, between each cycle it will turn to white and then back to black. But if you see these numbers, they're from -1 to 1. We want to change that to 0 to 255, which we can do with a math job. So from -1 to 1 to from 0 to 255. Let's rename this to colors. And let's add a null here. Add it to merge. Let's turn the instancing on for the colors, which is in the second tab here, instance 2. If you scroll down here, you have the RGB. So if you see here, you add colors, colors, colors. There we go. So for each cycle, when RGB is 000, it goes to black, and when it's 255, 255, 255, it goes to white. So black, white, black, white. But right now, if we see closely, we still need to fix a bit of the distance between y. Why is that happening? So if we look at our dy currently, we have it from 0.06 to 0.06, which is a problem because it measures it from the center of the square. So we need to remove this and this. So if we do 0.55, 0.55, our y is sorted. For our x, which we still have some space here. Let's play around with our wave. If we try to reduce the decay a little bit, yep, there we have it. Let's mirror this now. So for the mirror, we add a mirror top. Change the pivot to 0 and 0 and flip the X. Now we want to add a transform to it, a composite, to which we will add our mirrored image and our original image. Change the operation to over. Now if we turn the display on for composite and change the translate of this, make them overlap, so right in the middle here. Yeah, that looks right. Yeah, so there we have it, our Bridget Riley inspired optical illusion. Let me know in the comments if you guys want me to explain any particular parts of the video, and yeah, I would love to see what you all do with this technique of using patterns